Welcome to the Rising Entrepreneurs Podcast, where we feature top founders and entrepreneurs and their journey. Now, let's get started with the show.
Dr. Jeremy Weiss here, founder of InspiredInsider.com, where I talk with inspirational entrepreneurs and leaders. Today is no different. I have Nir Zavaro. You can check him out at NirZavaro.com. He has a book, Fuck the Slides. There's an asterisk in there, Nir, so for all, if so we won't say that on the cover, but you got what I mean. We're going to talk about his book, talk about his journey. It's pretty amazing. Nir, before I formally introduce you, I always like to point out other episodes people should check out of the podcast. This is part of the top Israel leader series that I'm doing. And I've been doing it for quite a while. We had Moise Navonan of Mobileye. And he talks about Mobileye, their journey to be acquired by Intel for $15.3 billion. But Nir, what struck me was that along the way, they were trying to figure out the course to sell the product and sacrificing along the way. And it wasn't always easy. He had to go back to his family, tell the kids and wife, listen, I'm pulling you out of all extracurricular activities. There's no more eating out. We're hitting on lean times. Okay. And that's the entrepreneurial journey. It's ups, it's downs. And Nir's going to talk about some of that. And there's many more. I had Ido of Perimeter X on, which is, cybersecurity company in Israel. We had John Medved of Our Crowd on. So check those episodes out and more on InspiredInsider.com. And this episode is brought to you by Rise 25. At Rise 25, we help businesses give to and connect to their Dream 100 relationships. And how do we do that? We actually do that by helping companies launch and run their podcast. We're an easy button for a company to launch and run their podcast. We do the strategy, the accountability, and the full execution. Nir, we call ourselves the magic elves that run in the background and make it look easy for the host and the company. You know this because you've actually done a lot of interviews as well. For me, the number one thing in my life is relationships. And I'm always looking at ways to give to my best relationships. And I found no better way over the past decade to profile the people and companies I most admire on this planet and share with the world what they're working on. So if you've thought about podcasting, you should. You have questions, you can go to rise25.com. And Nir, there's a deeper reason why I do this, really, which my grandfather was a Holocaust survivor. And the reason his legacy lives on is because someone interviewed him and told his story. And so, we talk about the business side, but there is a deep personal reason why. And you're about helping brands tell their story, which we'll get to. And there's a legacy they leave when they do that. So Nir Zavaro is founder, and you can check him out at NirZavaro.com. He's founder of Streetwise. He also has the book Fuck the Slides, and he helps people market through storytelling. They help businesses improve their sales and marketing. His mission, he says, is quite simple. They help brands sell stuff, but sell stuff so they have a good story. And his journey is pretty amazing, as I mentioned. He's worked at the American Embassy. He's opened bars. He's co-founded an extreme sports content website. He's done so much. And Nir, I just want to thank you for being here.
Thank you. We opened one of our bars that we opened in 2015. One of my partners, Asaf, he would grab me and say, I want to introduce you to my friend. She's amazing. You should marry her. And he would come to her and he would give this spiel that you just gave. And I would tell him, I feel like a hustler. Just tell her my name. I'll figure the rest out. And every time I hear this, I'm like, who's this weird guy? You mentioned your grandfather, and my grandmother passed away a few years ago. She was 106. She was lucid until the end. Two of my novels, the first books I've written, are dedicated to her, at 102 and 106. And she passed away 2 days after I launched my second novel. And she would tell us stories about the 1930s when they would hide cash from Istanbul and take the train from Istanbul through the Middle East to come to Tel Aviv and bring money. So they could buy weapons and armor and stuff to maintain against the Brits in those days. So everybody has some sort of a story that's connected to these people.
What did you learn from your grandmother?
Fearless. I feel a bit, now I'm going to travel the world. The book will come out Saturday. And by the time we do this, this will go live. The book will be out and I'll be traveling the world. And people are asking me, are you afraid to travel? If people know that, and so on. And I'm thinking about it. And then I hear her stories, and being fearless, is something completely different. And something through the social media era, through these ideas that everybody has an opinion and stuff, we forgot. But today, what I'm learning is leadership is measured today, not in a classroom, not about our revenue, right? And today we're writing stories that people will tell in 100 years.
Talk about the book a little bit and why you wrote it.
Yeah, I've had a very interesting journey. I think when I started, when I was in the 4th grade, my teacher said, he's nice, he talks too much, but he sure can tell a good story. And my dad always said, I hope you manage to make money out of this by speaking. And I would sit for years in coffee shops, and I loved telling stories. And I was a party promoter when I was 13, 14, 15. And this was my life, telling stories. And I loved meeting people. I loved hearing their stories. And you go to the army, you go traveling, you meet more people from around the world, and I fell in love with this idea. And I think almost everything I've done, including meeting people and telling good stories. And I know if you know this, when I came back to Israel and went to study communications and marketing, I sold snowboards in the desert. And sales is all about the story we tell. And selling a snowboard has nothing to do with the actual act of snowboarding. We're in a shop in Tel Aviv, it's 40 degrees, everybody's wearing flip-flops. But it was a story about how it will feel on the mountain, selling that feeling. And then from there, I went to do a lot of different things, and we opened a website for extreme sports. And I would write about sports cars and Formula One on the news. It was always about the story. And then I've done quite a lot of things, all had some sort of storytelling type of marketing and branding to them. And in 2010, I did the mistake I always tell people not to do. So there's 2 things you need to avoid in life to have a happy life, or 2 important. Never write a book and never open a bar. So this is my 3rd book. I'm starting to work on my 4th next month. And I've had, 5 or 6 bars that I've been a partner in. When we opened the bar, it was amazing. We had celebrities coming in, everything was amazing. And then suddenly there was no one. And by the time we finished that bar, I lost everything I had. I had to leave my job. And I would sleep on friends' couches. But if you ask me how I was, I would say I'm completely broke, and what an amazing time it is. Because when I was in the army, I read this novel, and I said, one day when I'll have nothing to do, I'll sit and write a book. So penniless, no place, no obligations. I said, yeah, why not? I'll start writing a book about the nightlife of Tel Aviv, the city, and the clubs, and the people, and the stories I've collected over the years. And at the same time, I said, I think I need to also think about work. And I said, let's figure out what's the best thing for me. And I made a list. And the list said, no inventory, no rent, no employees, and you can do it from any place on the planet. Guess what? This is consulting. And I started to help businesses tell a better story and to market in food and beverage, retail, where I was very good at. And slowly, year after year, I learned that the problem was not necessarily only the story, but the story didn't match the product. So you can tell them that you have the best restaurant, that the food sucks. Guess what? It doesn't work. At the end, you will lose. So I started to fix. I did about 70 businesses in food and beverage and retail in a few years. I started to hire an employee. And I think I had the domain Streetwise since 2006. I used it for different things. Every time we had a side hustle or a project, I would use Streetwise COA. And then I said, okay, so I have that domain. It's been there for years. It's probably got a good ranking. I'll use that. And a good friend of mine invited me to open a club. And I said, never again, I'm not going to do it. And he said, it's going to be the most successful club in Tel Aviv. I said, I trust you, me, I'm out. And they opened the most successful club. Most successful. And every time I would go there, I'd bring in my friends and he would say, why didn't you join us? I said, I have no FOMO. I'm happy. I have a different journey that I need to go on. And a year passes, he invites me to lunch. We're sitting in a very famous meat restaurant. And he said, how do you like this place? And I said, I love it. You see, this is a place I would open a bar. And he said, welcome, Mazel Tov. We're going to open a bar here. We just took the place over. And we opened in January of 2013, a place called TaylorMade, which was unbelievable. 700 people every night, celebrities, people from all over the world. I met actors and actresses from the US, and it was amazing. And it was a reminder that it can be done differently. I had a fail, an epic fail in a bar. Now we can do it differently. And at the same time, I even used the money, instead of paying debt, I used the money to build a hostess platform for restaurants. And I ended up selling that, but I never got the debt covered. I always had a different idea. And Streetwise started to grow. And I launched my second book, which was, again, a novel. And I started to work with startups. And I noticed that it was very interesting because most of them do the same process, have the same outcome. And guess what? Most of them are very boring, not inspiring, not interesting. But if they will explain what they actually do, you love it. But from a marketing standpoint, or a storytelling standpoint, it didn't fit. So I started to focus on working with startups on fixing not just their marketing, but what do they actually do, how they do it, and how could they convey a good message. And it didn't take long. We started to see some results. And I realized that I am doing the same process. In my mind, I'm running the same process. And I thought, as someone who teaches at college and universities, by then I was teaching for a few years already about marketing and branding in the universities. And I said, what if I could turn this into a method? Because I can't meet all these companies. I don't have enough time. So maybe I could turn a methodology into a book. And that took me on a journey. November 2021, I left everything, flew to London for a month. I would run on the River Thames and write and walk the streets and take notes and ideas, and started to work on a methodology that is today, fuck the slides. And it is the understanding that we use this buzzword, storytelling, but it doesn't mean anything. We don't understand how to actually do something with it. So this is how the book came to life.
What are some of the mistakes you've seen people make? And I saw that also you were Techstars mentor. What are some of the mistakes? And we're looking, if you're listening to the audio only, you can see we are on Nir's blog here, and he's got a bunch of great information, so you can check it out. Why is my pitch failing? It's the slides. Shorter is better. What do you see some of the most common mistakes when people are telling their story?
So let's start with the idea, are you actually a storyteller? Everything we do in life, the way we communicate is we convey story. What happens is people say, I'm not a good storyteller. Now I have a business idea. I want to make a sale. I want to improve something. I want to convince my spouse to take a vacation. We tell a story. The problem is if we believe that we are not good at it. So you might not be the best storyteller, but guess what? I run 5 times a week, and yet I will not win any marathon or any competition. But from the point where I started to train to now, the improvement was exponential. People today go into a meeting and hope they'll prep for an hour, 2 hours, they'll have 10 slides, and guess what? They will be amazing. It doesn't work like that. We need to understand that soft skill, storytelling is not a soft skill, it is a must skill. It is the thing you need to practice the most. And you need to understand that you will be improving exponentially if you decide to do it. And in the book, I explain a few techniques that you can do once a day or once a week and how to prep. The second thing we need to understand is we are treating our audience the wrong way. If I want you to sell me something, I don't need you to give me all the information. I don't need a 20-minute pitch. Now, when we meet startups and we say the demo day is 3 minutes, and they complain, 3 minutes is not enough, I can't do anything. I would say, okay, great. Can you write a 500-word article? And an article is a full page. It's a lot, 500 words. And they say, yes, 500 words is enough. Guess what? They're almost the same. When we speak, and this speed I'm speaking is about 130, 140, 150 words a minute. So there's enough time. Great. What happens is in the 3 minutes, I don't need to sell. I only need to open the door. I only have to be interesting enough. And you know what, that works really well in movies. You go to a movie, what do you see? A trailer pitch. Trailer. And at the end of the trailer, you say, I love this genre. And I love that actor and that actress. And it seems interesting. And the video looks good. You know what? I might go. I didn't buy, I didn't purchase, I didn't commit, I didn't do anything. In fact, all I said is I'm interested. I want to know more. So what I'm teaching you is how to create the trailer pitch, 3 minutes. Now, the 3 minutes are based on the way that you and I communicate, which is the emotions, the experience, the ability to fill the gaps between what I'm not saying, and I'll explain that in a second. And only lastly, we discuss the actual data, the actual information. And the reason is we communicate through emotions, which are universal. People around the world on this planet are all the same. This is how we communicate. The ability to complete through the experiences and the gaps. That means that if I tell you what's your favorite restaurant, you can explain. So if I tell you, I went to my favorite restaurant, you know how your favorite restaurant looks like. So you're there. And filling in the gap means I don't need to tell you everything. You're smart enough, if you've had enough life experience to be able to fill the gap. Now, what's interesting is if everything I'm saying now fits, and you need that, you will sell it to yourself. You will use everything I said and use the last piece, the information, to say, it makes sense, and $5,000 for this, that's very good value. So it is very important that we understand that we are good storytellers. We also need to understand how to interact. In the book, then, I will explain how to create, how to measure the story, because this is the most important, KPIs for storytelling. If we cannot measure if the story is good, how can we keep improving? And that has 3 different things. And then we need to understand this is an ongoing work. The more I pitch, the more I practice, I'll get better.
You were mentioning some techniques to practice. What was one of those as an example?
So I think one of the one I like most is what we call intuitive writing. I don't know if you've ever practiced that, but intuitive writing is what I teach in every workshop we do, for example. So pick a pen and paper. It's very important not to do it on a laptop or a desktop, because the keyboard creates or uses a different type of brains. And you take a pen and a paper and you think about something, anything, and you time yourself for 3 minutes and you write. Now, while writing, forget about everything. Punctuation is not relevant, mistakes, grammar mistakes, doesn't matter. No delete, no nothing. Keep going. I might start by saying I don't know what to write about today, or I might focus on a problem at hand. So now I need to do the marketing plan for the book launch. And I'll say, okay, the marketing plan should start with this, and keep going for 3 minutes. The beginning is hard because we're not used to writing anymore. And that's why we ask people to do it only for 3 minutes. But if you do it for 5, and at the end you read everything, you'll be amazed how many things will pop out. Think, And this is, by the way, when we are stuck, 8, 9 p.m., we ordered food and we're stuck with creative at the office. We'll all do 3 minutes and then brainstorm together what we found. And that will always help. Now, about 2 minutes in, what the magic is, you start tapping into your subconscious. You stop thinking about what you're writing, and it will just flow.
Nir, you talk about, I know you do workshops all over the world. Can you talk about, I think it was Industry 4.0?
Yeah, I was introduced to Industry 4.0, so everything to do with supply chains, right? Factories, shipping, like stuff that are not the normal day-to-day things I do in the company. And I did some workshops with Eiffel Valley, which is an amazing hub in Israel around Carliel, and they work only 4.0, and we met amazing people with amazing stories and companies. One of them, Zvika, the CEO, he called me about a year later. And he says, hey, so we've been invited to a competition, but we can't seem to tell the story. And I said, okay. He said, it's next week in Hong Kong, and we need your help. And I said, okay. And we had agreed on 10-hour work. We did everything in 8 hours because he didn't have enough time. They ended up going from an idea that's very complicated and very hard to explain, I'll do it in a second, to winning a competition, number 1 out of 50, getting the check, then getting the EU to sign a contract with them for the test, and then getting the next round they need. I remember, by the way, he's a great guy. He called me afterwards and he said, I know we had an invoice, but change it to any number you want. You took me in 8 hours from nothing to a company. By the way, I didn't do anything. He was amazing. He was the storyteller. I only helped him understand that he's able to create that story. And what we did is talk less about the complexity of the robot or the machine and how the spray works. Okay, but we focused on the hook. And within the 3-minute pitch, the first 30 seconds are very, very important to explain and help people understand what we actually do. And it was interesting because the product that they created is very complicated, but in fact, and I don't know if you know this, in factories, in order to clean the products, when it comes to food factories, cosmetics, it means they need to stop the machines for thousands of hours every year. So they're able to clean them. The cleaning detergents are very expensive. And in terms of ecosystem, they're part of the worst. And they're costing not only a lot of money, but between 150 and 2,100 people worldwide will die every year from the cleaning materials. And basically what we understand is in factories, clean isn't really clean. And we use that 3 times in terms of repetition. And then we explain what they actually do. But if I'll tell you, if you have a factory, I can save you thousands of hours, less employees. We all agree, he knows clean isn't really. He can save money on the detergents. Plus, there's less taxes or stuff because they're polluting less. So what happens in the hook is people say, wait, how can you do that? And if you think, when I want to sell you something, your first immediate reaction, and we're now on a video, but I'll put my hands up and sell me.
People are closed off.
Exactly. But if the first hook made them understand that there's something here, they'll say, how can you do that? The moment a person has to lean in, we sold it. You know, in the snowboard shop, people would come into the shop, they would say, I'm not buying. I just came here to look. It's a snowboard shop in Israel. You had to drive an hour, find parking, pay for the parking, walk. The shop was behind this building, but you only came to look. Now, in the back of your mind, you know, and I know, that if you see something you like, you'll buy it. Now all I need to do is not interrupt. So we would say, you're not buying, that's good. But just so you know, no matter what you're asking for, me, I will not sell you. And we'll do it in this very fun kind of way. So you joke. When they ended up paying $1,500, they would say, I can't believe you made me buy. And we'd say, I didn't do anything. I just helped you pay. The best sale is a no sale. I'm not pushing, I'm helping you. If it fits and you like it, you will buy it. And I think this is very important in the book to explain.
When you took that company and person through the Industry 4.0, what were some of the, like you said, it can't, you give them the person, like they did it all. I mean, but you led them through the process. What's been an example of a question or two that you prompted them to start to uncover these emotions, the most important pieces?
Yes. So the emotions are part of the KPIs, and the last piece where we want to measure everything. The beginning is to understand what are the buckets of information, because you believe that everything is important. In reality, audience doesn't. So the main thing was to define. And if you say we need to show them the competition, right? Every startup has a slide about the competition. Usually these slides are so complicated that you tend to talk about them for 15% of the 3 minutes. How weird. So basically, instead of putting so much emphasis on all the information and all the visuals, what we do is we start buckets. A market bucket, competition, product. And we start adding all the pieces of information there. And then we define the 2 or 3 most important pieces of information. Everything else is not relevant for here. And what happens is we can then focus on the most important things. And then what you need is less, not more. And remember, I only need some nuggets to get the trailer pitch for you to ask for more. That's all. And I think once that clutter disappears and they can think clearly, and in a 3-minute pitch, we'll have, 16, 18 pieces of information, suddenly the structure feels different. Then we can also understand what is the hook that we want to start with. What happens now? Everything makes sense. This is the hook, but so, and whatever you want to have, but we're unfolding a scene after scene. Only when that's done, we insert the text. So now, like a story, like in my novels, there's an unfolding, we create the scenes, and we are changing the paradigm of slide after slide. Here we're going to talk about the competition. Here we're going to talk about the product. Here's the solution. Why? It's not interesting. And once we are able to create a story, now what is interesting is when you ask people these guiding questions, like in the book, they know more than I do about their product. They know more about their journey. So it means that most of the time they would be able to create a better story than others. They know. So you're helping them build kind of like, I have this saying that when a client says, I want you to come up with marketing that's out of the box, right? So you say, okay, can you explain the box? If your brand doesn't explain the box, I can't think outside of the box. Which is, by the way, 90% of brands don't know how to explain their box. So we need to define it.
Near the Patrón Tequila World Championship.
Yeah. I got a call from a former bartender of mine, Vita, amazing woman. And she says, fuck the slides. It works for everything. I said, yeah. Can it work for a tequila? Yeah. And she's in charge of Patrón Tequila in Israel for distribution, everything. And she does a lot of the learning events and stuff like that. And we did in the Soho House at Jaffa, and we hosted the 10 finalists for the Tequila Patrón of 2022. And I taught them fuck the slides, very similar to how I would do it with the startup. It was very, very interesting. And there were an amazing group of people. By the way, I think that's a big part of doing these workshops. I get to meet amazing people and hear different ways of thinking, It always inspires you to say, this could be improved. You can do this different. And competition day, it was great. People had great sessions. Now, what's interesting about the Tequila Patrón competition, the finals, is 40% of the cocktail competition is about the story you tell. That is more points for the story than it is for the drink, the making, or the garnish. So the story is what makes the taste, the flavor, the feeling. Now, once the competition was done, an amazing girl named Mo. She won the competition, and I told her, listen, I think you're amazing. I'd be happy to work with you for a few hours and prep you for the World Championship. She was excited. I was excited. And I said, I know you're excited, but in 2 weeks, I'll be able to say I trained the world champion. And we worked. And she came up with the story. And I said, that's great. There's 19 other contestants, and all of them will start the story by saying, the challenge you gave us, or when I started botting, we need a story. And she had this amazing story about a woman who was the muse for many artists in the 1930s, end of the 1930s. And she traveled the world. And she always wanted to be the artist and not the muse. She found her home in Mexico. And we built the whole story around that. And she won. Both of her stories were amazing. And now she does a lot of things here. She has an ability. She can have a presence, a show, enabling her to understand that if she fixes a few things about how do you start, what's a good hook, how to structure the scenes, she became, in my opinion, invincible. And now when she does her bartending workshops, they're amazing.
What was she, in the end, pitching?
Cocktails, 2 cocktails. Okay. So she had to do 2 cocktails that we prepared for. By the way, they also had one that was unplanned. Okay, so you can implement the same structure. So if fuck the slides means that the team will prepare for raising capital, but tomorrow they will use the same concept to run their meetings. Now, when you want to raise money, you go in with one ask. If you like this, I need $1 million. Easy. When you go into a meeting, everything's confusing, right? There's a lot of things we don't. You're a product manager? Great. What's your one ask? Pitch it in 3 minutes. And it's important to state, the trailer pitch must have slides. I cannot go into a meeting with investors without slides. But the slides will play a supporting role, which is either a supporting role or a scenery. What people tend to forget is they use the same slides for everything. The pitch deck they send before, the slides they present when they speak, what they'll send after. This is not right. This is where we fail. Every type of supporting role that something has needs to be relevant for that piece of the puzzle. So the trailer pitch will have supporting slides, mean that you will have very little text, and they need to help you. It means also that if I take away your slides, your story is still good. And then we have what in the book is called the toilet deck.
What is it?
Toilet deck. I learned there's a TD, and I call it the toilet deck because there's 2 things we need to remember. One is the slides I send before the meeting, 1-pager, the pitch, the deck, or whatever you want to call it. I will not sit next to you when you read it. I need to remember you need to have more text than the trailer pitch because you will need to understand by yourself. Okay? And the second thing about it that I learned is many investors read the decks we send, they read them in the toilet. So we call it the toilet. Now, this is a standalone. I am not there. You need to be able on your own to understand what we're doing, what's the offering, what's the ask, and everything by yourself. Then when we meet, I am the presentation. The slides, if they're there, they're supporting. By the way, we had a story about a guy that the investors made him work with. He didn't want to work. We started writing the story. He didn't want to write it. Didn't want to do this. He was complaining all the time. And then when he had this very, very important call, there's 3 investors, all of them very well known in Israel. He's starting the pitch. Midway, about 1.5 minutes, one of the investors says, hey, so it's very interesting, just to make sure I can hear you clicking, but you didn't share the slides. And he said, this is the first time I understood why I'm working. His story was well enough to carry the pitch without the slides. And he kept going. And later he sent it to them. Okay. So I think once you understand that ability, and if you write, you know how it sounds, how you need to present it, that creates some sort of confidence. And most of us will go pitching when we have bullet points. So that means we are unprepared. We're improvising the most important thing. Okay?
Nir, you were supposed to launch your book October 8th.
I was supposed to start the marketing plan October 8th and November 5th to actually launch the book. But there were dozens of interviews and other stuff and about 100 pieces of content that was supposed to go live and getting a lot of support from all of the work.
I feel like, I can't speak for other countries, but in the US, when the planes hit the World Trade Center, I knew exactly where I was. I know a lot of people I know knew exactly where they were. Where were you October 7th?
I woke up to the second alarm. I didn't hear the first one. There was sirens, so I didn't hear the first round. This happens here every few years. It's not good, but it happens. And I went to the staircase, the apartment. I was waiting. I wasn't supposed to be here, so I was subletting an apartment close to my own apartment. And it was very strange because it was an apartment I used to rent many years ago. A lot of my stuff was still there, and it felt surreal. It felt like I was stuck in the past. I'm looking at my previous apartment where I'm sitting on the sofa. It's my coffee machine and stuff. Sirens are going off. I opened the TV and I realized that the world would never be the same. By 8:30 a.m. here, I understood that the world would not be the same.
Why?
I believe that in some way, for some reason, this place is important. I don't know why. And this place, this land, for some reason, became the gate. When this place falls, we will not understand what evil is. It will be so out of this world. And October 7th was the first time that hell was unleashed. And I will explain. We were talking earlier, and I said experiences and feelings and emotions. A big part of why you believe what I say is because you can comprehend through your experiences. Your mind can understand what I'm saying. Some of the atrocities that went on are things that if you will believe what I said, you will not know how to keep on living. If I would tell anyone on this planet that we know for certainty that in 60 days the world is going to end, people don't have anything to hold on to believe. It is easier to say, no, it didn't happen. We didn't see facts. Oh, this wasn't real. Because if it was, what does it mean? And I think that one of my biggest asks was in the first 2 weeks of talking to a lot of companies, a lot of business owners, and other stuff was, please don't fight. Try and remain calm. Try and discuss. Try and talk. And I posted on the 8th, October 8th, I posted, I think, a video, and I said, the world will never be the same. This is a new reality. I was supposed to launch a book called Fuck the Slides, but now who gives a fuck? And I think if I didn't have many years of travel and many friends around the world that I always helped when they needed, and I never asked anything in return, I would never launch this book. And the fact that you have friends all over the world and they're coming together to help me with the book is amazing. It's unbelievable. It shows you that people are people. People are all the same. They have the same wants and the same needs. True, some people have a very different concept of life, and with some we might not agree. But if we take out the extreme on every side, we need to hold on to something. We need to understand that if we don't have positivity or hope, then there's no point. then that evil will win. And I'm not at the point where I'm willing to let it win. And that's why I'm going to push on with the book and keep traveling. And, at the end, I want to teach as many people as we can how to become better storytellers. And sometimes, in order to hear and get the best stories, you need to be very present and you need to listen. And
Nir, I'm wondering your perception, of the world's reaction. And, before we hit record on here, there were sirens going off. You had to go into the basement. For everyone listening or watching, Nir looks super calm. But at the beginning of this, sirens were going off. We may not have been able to do the interview. You had to go in the basement. When sirens are going off, just to give people an idea, because we're in the US, right? What does that actually mean? What's actually happening when the sirens are going off?
I think we need to remember that we are very, very lucky. Ingenuity means that 96% of missiles are being intercepted midair. So far, there have been, I think, 6,000 or 7,000 missiles fired. When a missile does hit, imagine you took out a building, 2 apartments, cars that are driving, and so on. So imagine there's 2 injured, someone dies, Middle East, right? So what? But if we had 6,000 or 7,000, you're talking about thousands of dead. So we have been lucky that we find the problem and we find the solution. Remember that, by the way, many of the things that you and I are now using, there was a problem, we found the solution. So once that is solved, this becomes, sadly, a practical thing. There's a siren. I have about 90 seconds to go down to the shelter 3 floors down. It is what it is. We're not happy about it. We feel it's bothering us. But remember, this is happening to a nation. There's kids who won't stay alone. There's people, women that are pregnant, that are suffering from anxiety. And imagine how dangerous that is for the babies. There's people who actually get injured. The shrapnel that sometimes hits, and that happens. So we're lucky in the sense that we're able to maintain some sort of a life, but most of the restaurants are closed. Most of the businesses are closed. Most of the shops in the mall are closed. So the economy is starting to get hurt. On the other side, we're finding new ways of adapting. So if you look at startups, they're finding ways of working. And if you look at companies that need to export, we'll find ways. Remember, every time we face adversity, we improve. It's not happy. We don't like loss of life, not on this side or the other side, but we become better. And one thing that people will not understand is this thing in Jewish religion that every person is a word. It has a story, it has connections, it has a heritage, every person. We mourn the life of 1 or 2 or 3 like it's the whole world. What happened on October 7th is in the magnitude is we became a bit numb to numbers. Now, if you have us go from 1 as a word to 1,400, we'll figure it out, you have a problem. Because we are now numb to loss. And that is a profound thing for me to understand. We all went to funerals. We all have this fog when we do stuff. I'm doing this interview to keep my mind occupied on something. Because if not, what am I supposed to hold on to? And if we'll fight, we'll fight. And if we win, we will win. And if we need to be better, we'll be better. But all of this could be done so different. It shouldn't have been like this. Nowhere here, the other side, no on the planet. It doesn't serve it.
What was your perception of the world's reaction?
I'll take it from a storytelling perspective. Their stories suck. If you think about it, everybody is allowed to open a camera and talk, right? Now, what happens is everyone hears someone else and they say, oh, I like this message. I'll amplify it. I think finally, after many years, politically correct, which is an American thing initially, which we always, in Israel, we say, we don't care about this. Politically correct is not the right way to move forward, right? It's like lying all the time to everyone. Now we understand. We are learning who likes us and who doesn't. By the way, why does it matter my religion or my gender or my sex or my sexual preference? Why does it matter to people? People are people. But people need something to hate as much as they need something to hope for. That's how people are. The DNA is wired. This is how it is. Now, what is interesting, I think, suddenly a lot of people woke up, and there's a lot of the scare is becoming very tangible for a lot of people on the planet. Not just Jewish communities. We're getting that from a lot of people who are non-Jewish. And people are suddenly saying, what's happening? Where's this going? Now, I urge people that are listening or watching this, the fact that you have an opinion is amazing. Not relevant. It's not relevant. It is your opinion. Now, when your opinion and my fact are the same, then the world will go backwards. I urge people to have a discussion. A discussion means I would state what is an opinion, I would state what is a fact, and then I will listen to what you have to say. I will understand we can discuss. If two people argue, and the volume is what defines it, nothing is moving forward. It's like politics, when two people argue about politics. Have you ever seen a Republican and a Democrat argue in a coffee shop? Suddenly someone says, wow, you know what? I will change my opinion. Never. Never. It's your opinion. And it's fine that it's your opinion. But the fact that people are amplifying this is dangerous. Dangerous. And by the way, I'm getting a lot of videos from people that are not Jewish about, hey, look, but this Jewish guy from Texas says that. So pardon my French, but fuck you, guy from Texas. I've never met you. I don't know who you are. But remember, there were a lot of Jews in the early 1940s that thought that if they'll help the Germans, nothing will happen to them. They went to Auschwitz. So don't be a smart ass on social media. By the way, I made a post last week that I think there's nothing social involved about this media. I think the responsibility that people have, I think Elon Musk lost it anyway, so it's not relevant anymore to the story, but the other people who are still thinking about the money, especially Zuckerberg and stuff like that, they have a responsibility. People are dying because they're making money. And I think that's horrible, horrible. We also now are seeing that people have an extreme side or an extreme side, but the 90% that are silent are scared.
Nir, what are some of those things that you hear in the media that, when we talk about fact versus fiction, like you hear people coming out and saying ceasefire. What does that mean to Israel? What does that mean to you as an Israeli?
Let's start with the fact that no one likes war. I'm not, in no way am I happy about the fact that we're at war. Not on my side and not on the other side. We are not happy when we learn, and we're close to the people on the ground, sadly, and we also learn that there's a situation now when Hamas is pushing civilians to stay in fire zones, because then they can scream that people died. Guess what? They died, which is unbelievable. And the fact that the discussion is still there, instead of, hey, wait, what is really happening? By the way, Ukraine is fighting Russia. You don't have media the same as here. When the Americans are fighting in Afghanistan or used to fight in Iraq, media wasn't exactly there. So I think once everybody became enlightened and the woke movement and everything, why not come and say, hey, what is really happening? Egypt is not opening the border. Okay, why? Why are they threatening? What is really happening? In business, sometimes when things happen, there's a concept where we sit down and say, what is really happening? It's not what I think. It's not about losing a client or there's a problem. Or why are things happening? But no one is asking that. And by the way, I assume and some other people that will listen have kids. I assume. If someone came at 7 a.m. on a Sunday and picked your kids, shot your wife, and took your kids, and you don't know where they are, and they're captive, what would you do to get them back? Anything. Now, let's start the discussion. What happened before? Now, for that parent, it's not relevant. Now, you shook a nation to the core. I would even argue that you shook it too much, to the point where people now saying, hey, we can never let this happen again. We have you know how many, I had a call a few days ago and I apologized to 60 people on a call. And I said, I apologize if you feel that we failed you, that because of what's happening in Israel, we cannot ensure your safety in other places. Now, I do not represent my country. Sometimes I do because I go to a lot of events, and sometimes I carry a flag and I have a tag that says Israel. But I do not sit on any council. I'm not a politician. But this is how we feel now. So in the end, if we want to talk about politically correct, I think forget about it. Now people are saying what they actually think. Why is a different discussion? For us, it's very scary. Now, if we understand that we are not leaving, and we understand the other side only wants to kill us, now we can start having a different discussion. And if we're talking about a ceasefire, okay, give us back the kids, give us back the babies, give us back the women, give us back the young guys. Then we can talk. Why isn't nobody asking that? Why are the French offering, for example, a floating hospital and the Arabs are against? Interesting, huh? So there's a lot of different discussions. By the way, I think when we look at the story, this is a very, very small chapter. I believe that there are bigger things happening. And you can look at the global world.
Why is that? You brought this up Nir, when the plane hit the trade, hit New York in the buildings, the Twin Towers, compared to this terrorist attack massacre in Israel, I feel like the world had a much different reaction. Like you said something about the media wasn't in Afghanistan like it is now in Israel and in Gaza.
It's not the same, my friend. Manhattan is not the same currency as Israel. It's not the same currency as Tel Aviv. It is what it is. By the way, a lot of places on the planet don't carry the same weight as Manhattan. At the end, one of the last empires is the US. So when you heard them, it's a different story. The massacre here is 15 times bigger when you calculate the population size than 9/11. Every person knows someone. Okay, we just had an EO member sadly lost 4 members of their family. Not only was it that big, this was a calculated person by person. This is not a plane hitting and suddenly the buildings collapsed. It wasn't planned, all right? This is a calculated massacre of a one-by-one person. So I think also, I don't know if you've seen or heard, they're now showing some of the video clips, the unedited video clips to reporters. We heard the reporter last week. He said, I will never be able to unsee what I've seen. Some people threw up, some people left in the middle. Some people said it can't be that it's been recorded on their GoPros on 4K. The horrific things. Okay, some of the things that are now shown to people from the embassies here. Okay, to explain what happened. So I think it doesn't carry the same weight. It's far away from most places. Okay, and by the way, why should people in Australia or in the US or stuff care? This is the other side of the world for them, you know? And yet everybody has an opinion on it.
Yeah, I mean, Nir, as far as that goes, I'm gonna. What are some of the resources people should check out? Like you said, those people across the U.S., obviously they're posting the kidnapped signs, right? And there's people all over the U.S. Ripping them down, right?
Yeah.
And I've watched a number of the videos. Like people are denying it happened. I mean, they probably rip them down for all sorts of reasons, but one of them is, this is false. It's not happening, right? And or it didn't happen, or whatever the reason is. And now they're starting to release videos on this.
How do they know in New York when they're ripping it off that it didn't happen? They don't. Right?
Yeah.
So let's say out of respect, I don't know. Out of respect, I'm not tearing it up. Respect, I don't. There's a lot of things, by the way, I don't know on the planet that happen. There are a lot of atrocities I don't know. Now, when I have an opinion about Russia, Ukraine, which a lot of people were referring to in the first week, okay? And I read a lot and have opinions, and I don't post them on social media. I'm not an expert about the subject, okay? Plus, I'm far away. I can only hope I have friends on both sides that they will find a way, that it will resolve. I hate the fact that there's a war. I hate the fact that people are getting hurt. Hate. And I don't use hate very lightly. But why doesn't a person from Manhattan buy a flight ticket with his camera and come here and meet the families? They're here, by the way, every evening on the street, not far from where I sit. Meet the families. There's 200, I think, 50 now. In today's world, if you want to fact check, buy an $800 ticket and come. By the way, I was talking to someone that was cursing me, which I've never met. I don't know who he is. I don't know how he found my account. He was cursing me. I said, dude, buy a ticket, go to Egypt, go to the border, and tell them you want to go in. You want to see what's happening.
Yeah.
It's very important. If you have an opinion, doesn't matter what it is, if that creates a positive or a negative. At the moment, we're posting mainly Hamas as ISIS because we know for a fact that it's true. We know we're seeing what's happening to the civilians. We're talking to the civilians. By the way, I can share with you stories I heard from people who have friends on the other side that they call to ask if they're okay, which is a horrible situation. And they're saying, kill them, get Hamas out, get Hamas out. Okay?
We aren't hearing those stories here. I haven't heard a lot of those stories.
Great. You want me to buy you the flight ticket?
No, I'm saying, what's the sentiment of the people in Gaza that you and your friends are talking to and in Israel?
But listen, it's very important. We are only talking to certain people. Same way as someone in Jordan is talking to certain people. Do not assume because you've met two people that you can elaborate on or calculate for the whole population. It doesn't work like that. If you have an opinion, keep it to yourself. If you have a fact, you can mention it. By the way, the fact means that we can agree on it. Outside now is evening. If we cannot agree on evening, and you will say it's daylight, you and I have a problem. And the only way to resolve it is not verbally. And that is where the problem starts. I can share that we know certain things, but again, my own experience, I cannot talk for any person Sadly, I can't talk for every person in Israel. I cannot talk for every person in God. I don't know. I can aspire and hope that one day we will have peace. I can only, you know what? I can't even begin to imagine what a mother is going through. Okay, let alone the women and the mothers whose kids are kidnapped. I would not wish that on my worst enemies. And I believe these are the things. If an LGBTQ person believes that they are supporting an organization that would love to throw them off the roof, that is weird to me. Why do you have an opinion about this? What is your knowledge about this subject? And then I'm asking, hey, wait before you post. And remember that these actions of posting, because it's easy and fun, have some sort of a consequence on the other side. And if because you posted about this, and by the way, what we're seeing is LGBTQ is posting, Black Lives Matters are posting, hatred is spawning everywhere. And then the next thing we saw is Black Lives Matter groups are getting beat. So did that serve the purpose? It didn't. No one should be hit or injured or attacked. So, and we need to remember, there's a famous quote, that first they came for the communists, but didn't say anything. Then they came for the fascists, they didn't say anything. Then they came for the Jews, they didn't say anything. Then they came from this or that. In the end, when they came for me, there was no one left to stand up for. Remember that the next time you decide to post or pick a side that you have no understanding of. And I want to make it very clear. I'm not saying if that side or the other side is right. In terms of humanity, things that happen should never happen to anyone. And we need to understand, this is a whole new war where kidnapping kids is fine. So if you're woke movement or progressive and you tell me that kidnapping a pregnant woman, let alone executing, murdering, beheading, and so on, that's fine, I would argue that maybe you're not so progressive.
Nir, first of all, thank you. Thanks for having this conversation, especially during this crazy, difficult time. I really appreciate your time and your journey. And my last question is, what are some of the sources or experts that you encourage people to check out who are talking facts and they're living it? And I do want to point people to your website, Nir Zavaro, NIRZAVARO.com, and to check out and buy Fuck the Slides. No matter what you do, we always need to be a better storyteller. It doesn't matter if it's for our company, for our personal life. What are some resources people should check out?
I think, first of all, history is a pretty good place to start. I think. I've heard a lot of different variations. I would encourage people to read some of the histories of not only the region, but the understanding of what marketing or media is. And a lot of the things of the hatred we're seeing now, by the way, if you go back and you read the biography of Goebbels, okay, he was the Nazi guy in charge of how to create mass marketing and how to create that separation, that hatred. It is being used today in many, many places. I suggest reading The Spin Dictators, a great book from 2018 that talks about why today you don't need to kill millions in order to become a dictator and what's happening in some of the countries around the world. I think go back, first of all, and read the history. And again, I think once we have that, it's amazing to see that the history will repeat itself. Make sure you're on the right side of history. That's all. And you will know which facts are right.
Nir, one of my favorite resources that someone pointed out to me, I don't know if you've seen this one. It's a site called stopantisemitism.org. And you were talking about, it's very easy for people to post on social media and do things. But this site holds people accountable for doing some of these things. And so whether someone defaces a high school with swastikas, right? Whether there's, all the stuff that's happening across universities. And so this is a site that someone pointed out to me that has some, up-to-date information on what's happening around the U.S. itself.
I hope that we will find a way to go back without being politically correct and without using hatred as a form of helping ourselves achieve or become bigger or larger than someone else. This is not the way it should. We are all the same. People are people.
Everyone check out nirzavaro.com and check out more episodes of the podcast. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Nir.
Thanks for listening to the Rising Entrepreneurs Podcast. This episode is powered by Rise 25. Please subscribe and check out future episodes.